Hi.
Hi, Xenia. I'm starting with some conversation with interesting people, and you are one of the most interesting people that I know. So I would like you to introduce yourself and say who is Xenia, and say a little bit about yourself.
That's a good question. First of all, who is Xenia is something that I am still in a process of uncovering. So I can't give you a specific answer. I can say Xenia is someone who's a human being, who's an artist, a creator, a writer, someone who works in mental health. I'm also a mother, I'm a partner, I'm a daughter, and many other things. A friend and collaborator today with you.
Wow, that so many identities. So I'm really curious to present people who are watching and listening. What do you do? What's your main interest in your life? If you can be focused as you can.
I am interested in anything that's unusual, that is different, that is quirky. I am interested in spiritual, in cultural differences. I'm also interested in human relationships. How do we relate to one another? And I'm also interested in a bigger picture. And when I say bigger picture, it's seeing world from a different perspective, and you can see it in many different ways. It's up to you, but I'm always curious to hear how people experience this life. So yeah, at the moment I'm working as a deputy manager and a senior tutor for the Recovery College, which is based in King's Cross in London, in mental health setting. It's a mental health hospital that I'm working in. I'm also a freelance facilitator for people who hear voices and see visions, and they have experience of trauma and various other things. I also practice mindfulness, yoga for myself, and also teach others in those things. Personally, I do write. I like stories that are different, and I also do some visual, I would say, art. And yeah, I do many other things.
So
apart from
if I can say, I hear a lot of things that are connected with creativity, well-being, and mental health. So if you can explain, what does it when you say well-being, what does it mean for you? What's well-being? How can you explain that easily for people who are not really familiar or didn't even research about that? What's well-being?
So when we talk about well-being and in specific mental well-being, which is what I'm working with, but that encompasses also physical health. But when we talk about well-being, it's something that we all have, and we all have a capacity for. I'm a firm believer that well-being comes from our personal choice. It's something that we desire to have, and it's something that we are simply in the process of. It's not something that that is static. It's something that shifts and moves. And I like the definition of mental well-being as a holistic way of being and a continuum, which we are all on, and that continuum being life. And we are all on this journey of a lifetime, as I would say. And in that journey, we all have things that we might experience certain things that might be difficult, and we process these things in a different way, and sometimes we get stuck on repeat, I would say, and we have these mental blocks or difficulties. And well-being is something that when you are in a constant kind of flow and movement, and that you are working through these difficulties in a ways that is beneficial to yourself. So continuing, it doesn't mean that you don't have difficulties. It's how you process these difficulties, how you deal with them, how much you are resilient with these difficulties, and with yourself as well, and how you relate to others as well. So it's something that takes time.
So what I figure out when I speak with different people, that struggle in our life is something on in some moments in our life when we do not want to accept some kind of change. Do you agree with that? And can you say a little bit more about that? Like, what does it change mean to individual, and why some people do not want to change, and we do not accept change around us as well, because we see like everything is moving, there is a wind, there is a landscape is changing, weather is changing. So can you say a little bit more about your perspective on change? What does it change mean to you? And
well, I would say that when we are stuck in certain circumstances, if there is an overwhelming sense of fear, and there's an over sense of over kind of worry, or there's something that keep us stuck in a way that we don't like to change these things, even though they could be for better. We still fear the change because it means that we will experience something that is unknown to us. And this fear of unknown is almost like the ultimate fear of dying and us not being here. And just the thought of us not being here, or where do we go, it it gives us like visceral feeling of fear. And that fear kind of gives us a defense mechanism, I would say. Some theory, psychological, we kind of look for ways to defend ourselves from these fears so that we can feel safe and secure. And that feeling is ultimately something that we are comfortable with, and it's nice and lovely, but at the same time, it doesn't allow us to kind of shift and move. And it is quite a scary thought if you, let's say, you imagine that I can tell you that we are existing here as we're talking at this moment, but we are also existing in the minds of others. So it's not that only we are existing in this physical space now, we also exist in the space with our loved ones. So I exist for my daughter in her world, just as you might exist in the world of your mother and father, if they're still alive or not, or in relationship with others. So just this idea that we could exist in this realm of multiple realities is scary. because then we feel this fragmentedness of our own kind of unique self, which we like to keep quite sacred and untouchable. And we don't allow ourselves to feel the depth of it, because that depth ultimately is unlimited in some way. Yeah.
So I want to shift this conversation a little bit in a different field, and I'm really curious why we as a people, and I really saw this as a pattern. We really forgot to have a fun in our lives. So what does that have? What does that have with the well-being and feeling good with ourselves? How to remind ourselves to have more fun on daily basis?
Yeah, I think we are just, at the moment, I'm feeling I'm having fun. We're wearing this funny hat, and it's something that kind of keeps me childlike and playful, and it gives me that lightheartedness of life, which it doesn't allow me to get just stuck in the seriousness of life and thinking about all the possibilities, what could be like if we do this. It's just we are having fun, we are in the moment, I'm enjoying myself, and just the sheer enjoyment of that, it basically instills the well-being in a sense of joy and happiness, just relating to ourselves in a different way can shift us from being stuck in the mindset of, oh, we always think whenever there's a problem, or like you talk about change and difficulties, and life is all about change. Life is all about solving problems, I don't even like to call them problems. I like to call them like these challenges, it's like puzzles. And if we play with them, and if we put this hat on and another hat on and we laugh about it, it doesn't mean like it's going to go away, but life has its own story to tell. Life is not static, and it's not something that we can control, but we can enjoy, and we can enjoy our time here. And I think the fun of being together and relating together in a playful way can definitely give us more well-being, a sense of belonging, sense of laughter and happiness, and there's never enough of that.
I agree with that. So can you say a little bit about your method and your tool, Fluidity of Self? I see that as a more bigger picture, not as a tool, because when I heard for the first time about that, it just blew my mind, and I want you to say a little bit about Fluidity of Self and what's that like. It's really a good title for something. It can be anything, so can you say something about that?
So this idea of fluidity of self came actually from a dream I had a while ago, quite a few years ago. And I was in the dream sitting in this chair, just like I'm sitting now, and talking about the self and many sides of self to an audience, and saying how self is a bit like a snake. It coils around, and it's infinite, and it shifts and moves, and it's slow, and it's deliberate, and it's got this beautiful pattern, but it also has a mind of its own. And it's a bit like life in itself, like it can be dangerous, but it can also be mesmerizing, like a snake and its patterns. And I later on that idea I kind of took further and related it to my experience of being a refugee and asylum seeker many years ago, and having different national identities of Yugoslavian, Croatian, Bosnian, different kind of religions, Catholic, Muslim, then being British, and having all these different national identities meant that almost for me, I got stuck in this idea that I have to somehow choose one. It's something that's related to what happened back home in Yugoslavia. There was a conflict, and that conflict, which was on the outside, was internalized by me, and is almost like this internal process that took me to uncover this idea. Oh, well, I don't have to choose, and I can be all these selves and many more, and I can also be a creator and collaborate and many other selves, and I don't have to get stuck in this identity. And I guess going back to the first point you asked me is like, when we get stuck on one identity, it's like we are stuck in one story, and that story gets repeated over and over again. So for me, fluidity of self as an idea means that we could put like this hat and be one thing, and then we put another hat and we be another thing. And we can put as many hats as we like, or people could relate to us in many different ways, and that's okay. And that's just an idea, but also I developed this later on with my collaborator, Christina, who's a writer as well, and my collaborator. We extensively worked on a method and uncovering these principles, and we played in the studio, uncovering what fluidity of self really means. And we came to kind of a thing where fluidity of self is just an experience. It can't be defined because it's unique to each one of us. So it's not something I can specifically tell you, a universal thing, but it just means whatever that means to you when you play. So we played with boxes, and within these boxes we uncovered many selves that
So if I can summarize, when you speak about fluidity of self and different identities, my impression from that explanation is that you can really change by your experience. Is that kind of a message that you wanna say? And is that mean that people can choose what kind of identities they can collect? So can you say a little bit more about how is experience connected with identity, and if you can combine that with some kind of suggestion or message for people who are listening this, so they can practice something, or like some kind of practical thing that they can experience how their identity is changing.
So I think when we say, for example, I just go back again to your question about the change and being stuck in one identity, being stuck in one story, can lead to a lot of difficulties within our kind of struggles of just, being who we are, and thinking we have to be someone else almost, like we have to be someone that is a professional, or we have to be a specific kind of mother or specific kind of daughter, as if there is a certain ideal that we have to aspire to be. I would say we can be all of that, and you can choose the role so that actually you can be the best version of yourself or best mother you want to be if you really go into that role. But when that kind of relationship ends, which is you are not the mother all day long. Yeah. So when I relate to you now, I can be part of that, but now I'm relating to you in a different way. So in that essence, I am changing as I choose, but I'm changing consciously. So these stories that we have and struggles that we think they are problems, we can actually transform into assets. We can actually see things in a different way. We can look at the viewpoints of ourselves and say, well, it doesn't matter. Look, I'm doing this video now. I'm being a bit silly with the head, and I'm just talking to you, and it doesn't matter. I don't have to be always serious. I don't have to be always either professional or a certain good citizen or a creative person who is very serious about their art, or a writer that's really serious about their story. I can, be light about it and really have fun with it. And and practically, if you think of yourself and if you notice yourself, so we uncover these principles of noticing and being curious and allowing and accessing all these principles that are much more light-hearted and they are much more conscious. So if you are noticing yourself speaking in a certain way, you can notice yourself speaking in a different way, and it's your choice. You can choose because you are conscious of that when you notice. But if you don't notice, you are on autopilot. And then when we are on autopilot, what happens then? We are not in control in a way that, we can be, but not in a bad way. We can empower ourselves to make conscious decisions. So the more conscious we are, we can be making these decisions. So more curious we are, we can be more kind of fun, and we can be much more kind of productive with that. Or if we allow ourselves, which is another principle, to be different, then we can experience ourselves in a different way. Or if we access certain things like fun elements, or if we access our creativity, we can see different perspectives quite different. And yeah, so these are all these principles that are uncovered through these methods of fluidity of self when we are really living it.
So if people want to hear more about fluidity of self, and they want to hear and have conversation with you about how that kind of method can help them to see their life from different perspective, how can people reach out to you? I mean, I would in description I would leave your website, but how do you want people reach out to you?
I would say just a very simple way. I mean, they can reach out to me through the website or email me, leave me a message, or through you as well, because we collaborate really closely. But I would say start off with just kind of going on a journey and asking yourself how many selves I am, or how many selves can I be. And I would do this with another person, because this is something that you uncover through a relationship. And it doesn't have to be intimate relationship per se, like with your boyfriend. It can be with a friend, or even someone that's up to have a good time or fun. And you start just by having a conversation and see where it takes you. And I would say just that's a first start. And if people want to do a bit more like developmental work, and they want to uncover their potentials, and they want to see themselves in a different light, or if they want to see kind of themselves as more as a creative person, or overcoming some challenges for certain stories that they know that are kind of expired in a sense that they don't serve them very well, it does get them to a stuck point, then yeah, they can kind of work more closely with me. And sometimes it's just a couple of sessions, or sometimes we can do it more kind of longer work in a sense. But yeah, anything like that.
And have some fun in conversation, and figuring out who we are and how can we grow. I believe every person can grow through relationships and work we create together. I mean, I believe it depends on other people as well, and how we work together. That's kind of really important. So I'm really interested to continue this conversation maybe in a few weeks after we develop our work more. So maybe people would be really curious to hear a little bit more, and we can dive deeper in things that we do together. So I would finish now, and I'm so happy that we did this conversation and that we recorded, and I really had fun. So I invite all people to connect with Xenia and to learn about the work she does. It's really interesting. I know Xenia for 3 years, and I'm still learning what is she capable of. So I really recommend her Fluidity of Self. It would blow your mind. Okay, I would